Hey everybody, Mark again here, Weather Channel Live. Good evening to you. I wanted to wait and put a video up later today when we had a little more of an update on these cones. There's also going to be left and right movement of these cones until it does get out of these mountains. So keep that in mind. Nobody's track is definite right now. Now we have some storms going to the central and to the east. Later on, they got some that's in the northeast, but it will clear up. You will get a little bit more in the central and the east tomorrow, as there is some tonight in the Midwest that does phase out over the night. Now, Florida, you get a lot of bad weather, and we can see the storm moving in. So I'm going to come back and play this for you so you can see exactly what to expect from this thing, because it's definitely looking like it might be together. I'm not sure. But I'll see you after they do it. God bless all of you. It's good to see you today. Hope you're having a blessed day. It is Friday, guys. God bless you. I'll be right back when they come back.
We are closely monitoring for you Tropical Storm Laura that spins right now near the Leeward Islands. And then there's Tropical Depression 14 in the Caribbean, with the entire Gulf Coast now on alert as both tropical systems could threaten at the same time. And with nearly 1,100 miles of U.S. coastline in the forecast cones, we're breaking down for you each and every scenario and why the future track for both storms is not set in stone, potentially putting everyone from Texas to Florida at risk.
And making things even more difficult for emergency managers is the intensity forecast. We take you to areas in the cone to find out how they're preparing and discuss the complicated process of evacuating with two systems at play and the ongoing pandemic. Plus, in the West, a frightening scene as deadly wildfires continue to rage out of control. See where conditions are getting even worse. That's next on Weather Underground.
All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome in. Glad you could stay with us here. Hour 3 of Weather Underground. Plenty to cover for you. I'm Mike Bettis.
And I'm Jackie Jarris. We've got storm specialist Mark Elliott with us tonight as well. And all anybody can talk about for sure are the two tropical systems that are headed for the Gulf. You know, we still have a lot of questions, but the forecast starting to take shape now, Mike. It's just incredible to think that this is a serious possibility.
It really is. Two systems in the Gulf of Mexico simultaneously here. And, you know, there are now indications that they could go to very similar locations, too. We thought maybe they'd diverge a little bit in the Gulf of Mexico. That's not necessarily happening, but there's a look at them right there. A lot of questions we know with this forecast. And you have questions at home, rightfully so. We encourage you to send your questions our way on Twitter or Facebook. Use the hashtag Hurricane Questions, and we will answer your questions on the show tonight and, by the way, throughout the weekend up to landfall. So anything that's on your mind, any concerns you may have, send them our way. All right, let's get to the heart of the problem here. Here's Jackie.
All right, well, let's start out with Laura, and we'll start there first, and then we'll cover TD14 in just a minute. But Laura already beginning to affect, we think, the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico as early as tomorrow morning. So here are the main points of what we know right now with Laura. It will impact the Caribbean islands through the weekend with tropical storm conditions, not just the gusty winds, but heavy rainfall that could lead to some flash flooding and mudslides. We've got flash flood watches in effect for Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands as well. Now, depending on the location of the track and its interaction with land, that will have a huge impact on how strong the storm is going to be. If it gets over the Greater Antilles, over the mountainous terrain there, that would keep it a weaker storm. But if it stays just to the north of there or even just to the south, that would keep it over the open water, which would mean a stronger storm ultimately. And the U.S. impacts will likely begin by the early part of next week already. So those changes are beginning to come for sure. Now let's take a look at the current satellite picture, and there you can see Laura still packing winds around 45 miles per hour. Doesn't look all that great on satellite imagery, does it? It's really spread out, that convection. It's not close to the center, so still not very well organized. It is moving to the west around 17 miles per hour, so that's a pretty good clip and a pretty good forward speed. Tropical storm warnings in effect across the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, as well as the northern shore here of Hispaniola, and tropical storm watches now have already been issued, including the Turks and the Caicos. This is a look at the visible satellite imagery, and you can kind of see how everything's a little bit more separate than it was earlier, but there's still a lot of moisture in play and a lot to work with, so not a lot of dry air surrounding the storm that would knock it down necessarily. There's the forecast track moving through the Greater Antilles through Sunday and then working its way near the Florida Straits as we head into your Monday. Then getting into the Gulf of Mexico will likely intensify into a hurricane at this time, and now that cone shifted a little farther west than earlier today. New Orleans to Tallahassee, all within those cones. Now, let's talk about some of the models and bring in our storm specialist, Mark Elliott. You know, yesterday we saw a lot of consistency, and then all of a sudden today, boom, the models decided they're going to take a little bit of a turn.
And they did it consistently, together, right? The models jumped westbound together, both seeing a stronger area of high pressure. And so the forecasters at the National Hurricane Center took that as a nod, right? They started to bend that track. First, the center was found by the aircraft in the area to be farther south, so that bent this part of the track south and west, and then a forecast of a stronger high has been bending this part of the track off to the south and west as well. So no longer with all of Florida in the cone as it was not that long ago, right? About 24 to 36 hours ago, it was Florida, Florida, Florida. Are we clearing you, Florida? No, by no stretch. Please keep paying attention. Sometimes the models bend back in. If that high gives it up a little bit and is not as strong, then we'll have a return to a more northern and eastern track. It's just not the best forecast right now. Here's what the USGFS did earlier today. Pretty impressive change. Coming across Puerto Rico by Saturday, approaching, say, the Florida Keys by Monday, and then things get real interesting. An organized storm coming across the northern Gulf, going almost due east to west. A little bit of interaction from what's currently our tropical depression, but then also because of that stronger high. So coming up, this is a new run of the GFS, still keeping that theme, now going right up that Texas-Louisiana border. The European model is also looking at that change. The European model came across Puerto Rico by Saturday, then towards Cuba and the Florida Keys, somewhere in between by Monday. And it, too, bends much further west than this time yesterday. A little bit of interaction from what is currently a tropical depression and a stronger high means Louisiana at play with a strong storm system. So, gosh, the global, hurricane focus models are also looking much further west, and many of them, Mike, are looking very strong. Now getting with some of the outlier cases all the way up to some really strong numbers. So, again, not the most likely scenario, but one that we can't ignore at this point either. We're watching for that trend.
You said it so many times, Mark. Once these things get into the Gulf of Mexico, it's a whole new ball game. So we'll watch these things, every single advisory that comes in. Mark, thanks so much for that. We know that we're kind of predisposed to this point at some flooding across the southeast, and so we're keeping our fingers crossed that we don't get huge rain-making tropical systems. But this Forest City, Florida, where you can see it has been nothing but heavy downpours throughout the afternoon. Almost looks like a tropical system blowing through, right? That's a thunderstorm, folks. Many of you have experienced the thunderstorms this afternoon, and we're likely to see those storms go for a couple of more hours. It's Florida, it's Alabama, it's all the southeast. It's a pattern that has not budged at all for about a week now. And so every single day there's been this threat for thunderstorms. I-40, Memphis up toward Nashville, and now down 55. We've got some pretty good thunder boomers here, and the storm's really starting to form across central and northern Alabama as well. Really heavy storm complex coming through Atlanta, brief urban street flooding affecting us here. Rainfall rates exceeding an inch an hour, and then plenty of storms down through South Florida, around Okeechobee, but Naples and Alligator Alley, then up 75. It is Naples, Fort Myers, Sarasota, and up toward Tampa as well. I-4, that also a highway that every single day this week it seems like it has stormed on it. You see what the last 7 days have produced. That is a rainfall totals map for 7 days. Some hot spots in there in orange and in yellow on the map where you're 5 or even 8 inches of rain in just the last week. If you look at where our departures are for just the summer, there are plenty of very, very soggy locations. Unfortunately, in particular, it's in Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, certainly portions of Florida, the Carolinas. Some places where we're doing okay, and maybe a little bit of rain won't hurt us, but the areas where we already have tons of rain, we don't need any more. So a forecast like this, when you see what's coming with Laura, and maybe even adding some with Tropical Depression 14 that could strengthen to Marco, we're worried that a forecast, could it pan out like this, as the European model depicts? Really heavy rain into Louisiana and Mississippi. That'd be beginning Sunday, going all the way through Thursday. That doesn't bode well. There's a look at the updated GFS model. It's now trending more to what the European model is saying. So when you look at what the trends are, at least here, Jackie, it does not bode well. We have got to really, really concentrate on what the flood risk could be and how we're going to save ourselves from that flood water.
Yeah, you never want to see that saturated ground leading up before a tropical system. So let's get the latest in the nuts and bolts here on TD number 14 and what we know right now. It is expected to increase in intensity before impacting Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula this weekend. It will then re-emerge into the Gulf of Mexico at the beginning of next week, likely get a little bit stronger, but that intensity forecast still uncertain for a number of reasons as it heads towards the U.S. early next week. We'll get through those, and Mark's going to have more on that too in just a second. But let's hit the statistics. 35 mile per hour tropical storm right now. As we take a look at the satellite imagery, you can see this little blow up of convection here. The last couple of hours, we've really seen a significant change in intensity on the north side of that system. So that may be a sign that this is getting stronger. We'll have to wait and see. The 8 o'clock advisory is coming in pretty soon. So we'll see if that does indeed get a name. If so, it would be Marco. We've got tropical storm warnings now that have been posted across parts of the Yucatan Peninsula, including you in Cancun and in Cozumel. So those conditions are going to be arriving before your weekend is out. The visible satellite imagery, really interesting to take a look at this too, because it really tells you a little bit about the structure of the storm. Earlier, you could see how that center was exposed. There wasn't a lot of cloudiness near that center at all. And then all of a sudden, boom, here are those big thunderstorms beginning to blow up. It's hard to even find that center a little bit now that those thunderstorms are more concentrated around the center of all that. But look at all the moisture here in play. There is a ton of it to work with, and eventually we think that's all going to get absorbed into our big system. Water temperatures are very, very warm. You only need 80-degree temperatures to sustain a hurricane. We're way beyond that. Water temperature sampling in the mid-80-degree range. So the forecast track has it strengthening to a pretty healthy tropical storm as it approaches the Yucatan Peninsula, may make its way all the way over Cozumel as well. That will happen late Saturday or early Sunday. It will weaken a little bit because of its interaction with land, but then will likely intensify again once it gets over the warmer waters of the Gulf of Mexico. So the forecast does have it as a strong tropical storm or hurricane at landfall, affecting Texas, maybe southwestern parts of Louisiana. But there are a couple of different factors as to exactly where this is going to be steered and where this is going to be going, which could also affect the intensity. So, Mark, you're going to pick up the story there of how that jet stream could eventually affect this.
Yeah, and of course, with both systems at least potentially coming towards Louisiana, some breaking information right now that the governor there just declared a state of emergency because of that potential. So, two storms that are both bending much farther west than what we were talking about at this time yesterday. Let's focus in, as Jackie mentioned, with Tropical Depression 14. Still forecast to get its act together, as she was showing us. It is doing so right now. Strong tropical storm coming across the Yucatan, potentially a hurricane in the Gulf. And then some of the models are still weakening this storm system right before landfall. So that's not necessarily land interaction. What's happening there? Well, the answer is that the trough that's nearby will at times be in a bit of a Goldilocks position, meaning close enough to actually help the outflow from our storm system. So by Sunday, we're back over the waters of the Gulf. We got some very strong winds with our trough, and that is going to sweep away that upper level air, right? It's going to take that top layer away, helping the outflow, the lungs of our storm system. The air at the surface then can rise up to fill the void. And so you get more rising air, lowering pressures, and organizing storm system because of the trough nearby. However, you can run out of that Goldilocks position if these storms get, the center of whatever it is, whether Marco or still a TD, whatever's left of that swirl gets near that trough, well, then it starts to break it apart. And so that's what the different hurricane models are looking at, because if it can avoid the trough, gosh, all bets are off with regards to the heat content in the Gulf. Very, very warm ocean water heat content, deep through the column as well. So if you can avoid that trough, you're up near a significant hurricane. If you're just run in by the trough and some land interaction, you've got a weak tropical storm at most. I think that's why we've got this kind of spread here, Mike. And honestly, there is still a risk of even stronger, with that trough nearby, but not right over top of it, and with the water content the way it is.
So true. Thank you so much, Weather Channel. And guys, that is the officials right there, the meteorologists. You got a bunch of them in one room. Now, according to the new update, as far as all this goes, now the Cat 1 is expected to be up to 75 miles an hour on Laura, on the the 14, it expects to be up to 75 miles an hour as well, but downgrade immediately to a storm. This one's showing that it'll stay up to 75 with a wind gust of 92 right before landfall. Now, your severe weather this evening, you're going to have it in the central U.S. and the East Coast. And the reason why I'm showing you this, because at the end of this loop, you're going to see what's moving into the Gulf. The Midwest, you also got some storms moving in tonight that will dissipate overnight until tomorrow morning, as well as the central and the East Coast, which we'll get some more tomorrow. Northeast, you have some storms passing through now. Those are going to fade out soon, and they're going to be gone. And you're even looking good for tomorrow, so that's a good thing. And tomorrow's looking clear, except for a little bit is popping down in the central, and then the East Coast pops up a little bit more. If you look at it, you can see a little bit more of the storms, but they go away. Now, as far as this thing coming in here, you get to see it when it gets up to our American radars that get close to our land. And you can see Florida gets a lot of bad storms right above Miami. And it goes all the way through, and then you start seeing the wind bands come. But end-to-end shots, it looks to me like both of them might be merging together. So this little flippering wave pattern that you see back and forth right here with the storms and the rain, that will probably continue to be more of the pattern of where all this rain and all these storms are going to go. Okay, it looks like this area for Louisiana looks like impact on both. I don't see this moving much more west. If it does, it'll go westerly and burn out towards South Texas. I do see that the bunt end of this storm does continue to move more like right here. I'd say more towards Lake Charles when it gets towards where this hurricane's going. But you can definitely see the formation of it. I'll play the last few hours so that way you can see the storms coming through Florida as well. It's going to be some pretty bad, tough storms. Look like they're going to be starting around 4 p.m. would be my best guess. Yeah, about 4 p.m. tomorrow. It looks like the storms are going to be starting, so be aware of that. Let me play this for you so you can see exactly what's going on these impacts. That way you can see minute by minute of what's going on. Because these severe storms, if you look, you can see the wind bands already pushing out. So this thing is already strong as can be. So I will update this again in the morning. I'll do it real early so you can get severe weather for the day as well, because we will have a new picture of these tracks. Now Psalms 84. How lovely your grand tabernacle is, O Jehovah of armies. My soul has yearned and also pined away for the courtyards of Jehovah. My own heart and my very own flesh cry out joyfully to the living God. Even the bird itself has found a house, even the swallow a nest for herself, where she has put her young ones. Your grand altar, O Jehovah of armies, my King and my God. Happy are those dwelling in your house. They still keep on praising you, Salah. Happy are the men whose strength is in you, and whose heart are the highways. Passing along through the low plains of the baka bushes, they turn it into a spring itself. Even with blessings, the instructor enwraps himself. They will walk on from vital energy to vital energy. Each one appears to God in Zion. O Jehovah, God of armies, do hear my prayer. Do give ear, O God of Jacob, Salah. O shield of ours, see, O God, and look upon the face of your anointed one. For a day in your courtyards is better than 1,000 elsewhere. I have chosen to stand at the threshold in the house of my God, rather than to move around in the tents of wickedness. For Jehovah God is a sun and a shield. Favor and glory are what he gives. Jehovah himself will not hold back anything good from those walking in faultlessness. O Jehovah of armies, happy is the man that is trusting in you. Amen. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you all have a safe night. I'm going to go ahead and stop it here. That way it won't take less time for it to upload to you. In the morning, I will show exactly what these severe storms are going to do, and we will be able to see more of this track. But it looks like they're starting to swallow up into one motion. Tell me what y'all think in the comments. God bless y'all. Hope you have a great night.